Okay, we have about 2 minutes to showtime. We'll let the chat room load up a little bit. This will be America Free Radio on Revolution Radio. Have a seat. Chill out. We're waiting for the affiliates to connect. Looks like everybody's connecting except D-Live. Goes Twitch. And we're waiting for D-Live. As soon as D-Live connects, well, not yet. YouTube is live, Facebook is live, Periscope's live, Twitch live, D-Live we're waiting on right now. No problem. We'll just bring the studio in and get as we go.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslip.com, the People Station.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
We did not engage in conflict that was out of line with our mission.
Is it disloyalty? Is it sedition? Is it treason to oppose the hands of tyranny? Never!
I will never send troops anywhere on a mission of that kind without telling them that if somebody shoots at them, they can darn well shoot back.
I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty! Oh, give me death!
A dark cloud is finally lifting across the world as U.S. military intelligence and their global partners are destroying the deep state criminal power structure that has ruled over our planet for hundreds of years.
We are free with the God-given right, and we shall not yield that right to any power on earth.
Hi, I'm Scott McKay. The world is at, and I am your host on The Tipping Point on Revolution Radio, where every Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, we bring you the latest in this ensuing takedown of this global criminal empire.
That's an image of strength.
You'll get the raw, hard truth here on The Tipping Point. So come join us Mondays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern in Studio B at revolution.radio.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it.
Right! You tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio.
first hour. Here we go. Greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. We're streaming to you live from the America Free Radio studios on Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. This is where the past meets the future. In here, the results are always positive. We may go a little past your imagination. Have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us. Drive carefully out there, those of you that are listening to us on AM or iHeart or TuneIn or on the Revolution Radio through freedomslips.com. The chat room is filling up. For some reason, DLive is not accepting the feed tonight. So if you're listening on DLive, I guess you're not listening on DLive. You have to go to YouTube and you'll find me. We're there. All right, I've got a lot to go over tonight, and I'll be watching the chat room until we get finished. You know, we've been shipping stuff all over the world from the United States since, the 1600s, maybe the mid-1700s for sure. And ever since that time, shipping has always expanded. It's always grown. It's always been busy. But the number of shipping container ships stuck at anchor off Los Angeles and Long Beach is down to around 20 per day. Just a few months ago, in the middle of COVID country, it was 30 per day. Now, a lot of people don't know what this means. I'm in industry, so I watch this pretty closely. Does this mean the capacity crunch in the Trans-Pacific market is finally easing? No, it isn't. This is a warning from Nerijus Poskas, Vice President of Global Ocean at freight forwarder Flexport. Now, Flexport is one of the big, what we call a mega or a super container ship. They are freight forwarders. So, you know, when you ship shipping containers, you have to worry about weight and balance. You have to worry about size. You have to worry about perishables, refrigerator containers that can't be locked in. There's all kinds of logistics that goes to this. And Flexport's one of the biggest. He said it's not getting better. It's getting worse. And that's what he told American Shipper in an interview a couple days ago. He said, what I'm seeing is unprecedented. We are seeing a tsunami of freight. For the month of May, everything on the Trans-Pacific is basically sold out. We had one client who needed something loaded in May. It's just April, by the way. He needed it loaded in May that was extremely urgent, and he was willing to pay $15,000 per container to get it loaded. He couldn't do it. And we're a growing company that ships a lot of 20-foot equivalent units. Price doesn't even always matter anymore. That's a strange position to be in. Since Virtual Joe has brought his criminal organization into Washington, the amount of shipping that is coming in from China has gone up 136%. 136%. And I have to tell you, since this country was well before the Civil War, we've never had just 20 ships at anchor. Never. It's always been more, always been waiting more to come in. Why is that? Because stuff isn't going out. Stuff isn't going out. With imports far outpacing retail sales growth, he attributed volumes to inventory restocking. The restocking is actually affecting the trade even more than growth in demand. That tells me this is going to last even longer. Let's say U.S. consumer demand slows down in quarter 3 and quarter 4 of 2021. Now, that's not expected, but even if it does, rates shouldn't improve very quickly because of the huge restocking demand. Let me put this in perspective. How many of you in the chat room have gone to Home Depot or Lowe's in the last 3 months and tried to buy an appliance, a washer, a dryer, a stove, a fridge, something like that? Yeah. The issue is they don't have them. Even the major manufacturers, the major American manufacturers, they can't get them out the door. They cannot get them out the door. They're not even taking orders until the middle of May. The reason is because Virtual Joe and his criminal organization in Washington is actually paying people to stay home. Industry-wide, everywhere you go, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether it's a service industry or a factory, they have 13% average absenteeism. 13%. That's insanity. You know, years and years ago, 20 years ago, we thought it was a disaster if a company had 70% turnover. But there was always somebody outside ready to go to work. That's one of the reasons why HR would fire people so easily, because there was always somebody standing outside ready to go to work. They had resumes 3 inches deep in the file drawer. It isn't that way now. It is not that way now. Companies are having to forego hiring degreed engineers to hire experienced engineers. In other words, maintenance guys who have been working on the line or working in factories have gained more experience doing repairs, doing installations, doing upgrades, doing relocations than the actual engineers have, but they don't have the degree. Now, heretofore, insurance companies and states would reimburse and otherwise incentivize companies who hired people that were degreed. If you hired a degreed engineer in North Carolina, the state of North Carolina would reimburse you half their salary for the first year. Well, that's a hell of an incentive. But they had to drop that incentive. You know why? Because they couldn't find any engineers to go to work. So they had to start hiring maintenance guys. They had to start hiring people from other industries that didn't have degrees but had experience with the equipment they were using. So there goes the rebates. Why? Because they can't get people to come to work. Now, Poskus, who believes there is a growing export backlog piling up each day in Asia, awaiting available ship slots, if that backlog grows any bigger, right now it's 136% of what it was when Trump was president. And everybody was making money in this country. Everyone. The median income went up. The poverty level was almost non-existent. People that were considered the working poor, their wages grew by the most, almost $6,000 a year. That's enormous, enormous growth. Unemployment was lower than it's ever been for all classes. And in 100 days, Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals have ruined it. And it's as though China knew it was going to happen all along. As a result of the backlog and the restocking demand, Poskus thinks prices will remain high and shipping will probably remain difficult for the rest of this year. And then after that, you have the peak for the Chinese New Year in 2022. Chinese only work 11 months out of the year. They take all their time off in 1 month. Yes, Alan is exactly right. Alan Holman says a fridge took a very long time to deliver recently. We finally got it in the other week after many months of waiting. Exactly correct. Exactly correct. He said that the situation today is the worst he's witnessed, and he believes it's about to get even more severe. Buckle up, the month of May will be the worst people have ever seen, he predicted, because some shippers will have to wait in line behind the growing backlog in Asia, he expects. For what's going to happen soon is that some importers won't even be able to get on the boat. For them, it will almost feel like trade is coming to a halt. Poskis's comments mirror cargo bookings data. FreightWaves is the sonar platform which features a proprietary index of shippers' ocean bookings. Bookings to the U.S. are measured in 20 equivalent units, 20-foot equivalent units. Some shipping containers are 53 feet long. And it's on a 10-day moving average basis as of the scheduled date of overseas departure. As of Monday, the index was at a new all-time high, and forward bookings data showed a continued rise ahead. As of Friday, the Freightos Baltic Daily Index assessed the Asia West Coast spot rate at $4,797 per 40-foot equivalent unit, and the Asia East Coast rate at $6,306 for 40-foot equivalent unit. Both are near all-time highs. But that's only part of the story. Indexes are not bills. Premiums are not reflected in the indexes. Earlier this year, some of the premium charges came down as container availability in Asia improved. Well, that's reversed. Poskis, who noted that the Ever Given, that was the mega shipping container ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal, pulled container equipment from the market. Container shortages in Asia are again very bad because of the Ever Given. It will take another 4 to 6 weeks to come back to normal. The added premiums to get spot cargo loaded are back, and they're higher than ever before. They're $2,000 to $3,000 above spot price, and that's the best case. Spot cargo that was booked 21 days prior and was forecast within the shipper's allocation is still getting the spot price, he noted. However, everything last minute is basically a free-for-all auction. You're basically offering as much money as you can and hoping somebody will take it. Many importers are now struggling. They're seeing so many new customers approaching us for help because they can't get loaded. And we were seeing the issue this time last year trying to get big tools that we had ordered out of China on the ship. Now, these tools, they go in a shipping container, but some of them weigh 40,000 pounds, so they take up a whole container by themselves. They're created by themselves. And we couldn't get them on the road in China because of COVID. Everything was locked down. And here we were, had all these machines and presses ready to go, and our suppliers couldn't get the tools in the country to manufacture the parts. In some cases, we kind of pulled a fast one. We had them, instead of shipping the tools to the United States, we shipped them to Morocco. And then we exported them from Morocco to the United States. There's all kinds of tricks to get things going and get things on the road, but you really have to have some sharp logistics people. So the advice to the importers, these are people in the United States that are buying things from Asia. Carriers need reefers in the U.S. market for refrigerated exports to Asia. On the way back from Asia, these reefers are powered down, and they can be used as non-operating reefers to transport dry cargo. Believe it or not, carriers are still moving some non-operating reefers empty because importers don't like them. They are insulated, so they have thick walls. They don't carry a full 8 foot of stuff on the inside. They have a low ceiling because of the evaporators that are in the ceiling of them. So it's hard to ship in them. Now, believe it or and they also have a smell to them. When they're powered down, all of that aluminum, all of the evaporators have a smell to them because of the mildew that kind of builds up in them if they're not chilled. So it's a missed opportunity to move cargo in these, and because you don't get all the cubic footage that you need, and these things very, very often will cube out before they weight out. Now, they'll carry like 67,000 pounds, but typically what happens is they cube out with tennis shoes or clothing or, lightweight stuff like that, and they don't weight out. He also suggested moving cargo via less than container load shipments. LCL is still moving. Of course, you cannot move thousands of LCL containers. If you have something urgent, you can still get a space for LCL on May sailings instead of waiting, but I'll tell you how it's done. It goes to consolidators. These several LCL shipments will go to one location. They're all bound for, let's say, Long Beach, and they'll stick them all in one container. So you'll have maybe 6 customers' stuff in one container. And then it'll arrive in Long Beach, and then the shoreman will break it out and load it on the trucks, and off it goes. But that's how the logistics companies make 6 times their money, because each one of those less than container load buyers pays premium price because they're not shipping high quantity. So by the time you put the quantity into a container, it's expensive, and they make a lot of profit doing it. Another option is be creative with your routings like we were. Ship it to Morocco, route it through the Panama Canal. It takes 7 or 8 more days, but it can be done. It has, sometimes you can get it here in time. I won't say you get it any quicker, but you'll get it in time, and otherwise you won't if you just put it on the regular 11-day ship. So get your cargo to the continent of North America, and from there you can get it to wherever it needs to go, whether it's with a non-operating reefer or LCL or transshipping hubs like Cartagena, or shipping it to Canada and then putting it on rail to Chicago and then trucking it to New York. Oh, it's going to be expensive. I've done it. I remember ordering batteries, and they came out of Shenzhen, and it took me 70 days to get them, and they came through New York. It was crazy, absolutely crazy. All right. By the way, thanks everybody for showing up at YouTube. For some reason, DLive is... let's see, hang on a second. Maybe we can click them on now. I think they just... Thanks, sir. There we go. All right, DLive is streaming now. Had a little snafu there in the software, but we managed to save it. Okay, so all the DLive people are now live. That's all right, LA. I don't mind that you're late. I was late with the software. By the way, Restream has started its new Facebook group, and there's only a couple hundred of us in there now, but there are a lot of programs like mine, and in order to expand our market, we're streaming live on several platforms. I'm streaming on 6 platforms, and there are other people that are streaming on 6 or 7 or 8 platforms. Most of them are pretty small, but this is how the industry is adapting. This is how it's growing. And it's no longer just YouTube. YouTube has basically run off about half of its audience. And I don't think that's ever a good thing. I don't care how big and how rich you get. You just can't run off half your audience. Twitter is, I don't even know if Twitter is going to last the year. Now, they're sitting on a pile of cash, an absolute pile of cash, an Everest of cash. But, if you're losing money, a couple years ago, Twitter put itself up for sale. Yeah, it was before the Trump administration. But it put itself up for sale, and guess what? No buyers. Nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted it, so Jack had to keep it. It wasn't until President Trump got on Twitter that Twitter began really making money and really growing. And what did they do with the growth? Well, they became corrupt, and it's a terrible thing. We hate to see it, but that's what happens. So we may see a change in the tech industry. in 2021, certainly by 2022, because the forces that are driving the real money behind the tech world are changing. Silicon Valley people are moving out. Twitter is way, way down from where it was. Facebook is kind of holding its own, but here's the thing, Mark. You keep putting people in Facebook jail, and they're going to leave. They're going to go other places. It's simple economics. Economics are, if you treat your customers badly or you charge high prices, your competition moves in. And that's exactly what's happening. Millions and millions of people are leaving the tech giants and they're going elsewhere. And I thank you very much, Ruthie. She says, there are no programs like yours, one of a kind. I so appreciate that. You have no idea what that means to me. It's why I work all day and then race home. I popped a bowl of popcorn when I got home and then jump behind the microphone for these 2 hours. I wouldn't give up my Wednesday and Sunday nights for anything. I might give them up if I had to work at night, I suppose. But I'm happy to work the 70 hours a week, and I'm happy to do what I do because I get to talk with you and I get to hear your thoughts. All right, I want to talk to you a little bit about critical race theory. I know you've heard both sides of it, but you haven't heard my side really. I'm kind of a data-driven person. I like to gather data and then treat the data and then look for trends, look for patterns, look for failure modes. And so when I hear something with the word theory behind it, as a scientist, hang on a second, put my phone on the charging bench. As a scientist, I have to say, wait a minute. In order to do a theory, first of all, you have to have a hypothesis. And then you have to create experiments to gather data. And the data is designed to either prove or disprove your hypothesis. Sometimes we do what's called a null hypothesis. We try to prove something is false. And when we're unable to do that, we actually prove that it's true. It's called the null hypothesis. But in science, we don't start with the word theory. We just don't start with the word theory. As soon as you begin with the word theory, it means you're stupid. It means you don't understand science. You don't understand the scientific method. So now the data is beginning to come in. Now the data, the experiments are being run, the measurements are being made, and the data is being gathered. And this critical race hypothesis is being proven false. The Idaho State Legislature is now the first state in the nation to put a bill on the governor's desk that would ban the Marxist-based critical race theory from being taught in public schools. If you think about where Marxism comes from, what the Marxist philosophy is about education, traditional educators believe that the purpose of education is to teach a student how to understand the world, okay? Once you teach a student how to understand the world, how to learn, then they can teach themselves, and then the world becomes a better place. Marxism, the core philosophy is you teach students how to change the world, okay? And that always comes with an agenda. So this is why a couple generations of students going through this Marxist core theory in our schools have come out unappreciative of America, without any useful knowledge of our Constitution or our system of government, believing that government has the solution to everything and that capitalism is the bane of civilization. And we are seeing the results of it. While you and I were out working our asses off, trying to make a paycheck, putting our kids through school, making our mortgage payments and car payments and insurance payments and all the other payments that come with it, While we were doing that and wondering at the end of the month how we were going to make it, our kids were in the class being taught by Marxists. And so, and it's, I've seen it. I can see it right now. I have 30 and 33-year-olds who came through that education system, both K through 12 and postgraduate, and you cannot change their minds. They are dead set that, socialism's good, and all we need to do is work really hard. We'll put all our money into one big pot, and then the government will give it out according to our needs. That nobody needs to be rich. That the incentive of success is evil. It's evil, and that's what they're taught. That what we really should be striving for is nobody falls through the bottom crack. You don't have to worry about the top because they've already had all their heads cut off. Nobody falls through the bottom crack. Everybody is an eligible and functional worker. That's why when Nancy Pelosi gets up and talks, or when Harry Reid used to talk, or when Chuck Schumer talks, they always talk about working class Americans, right? Working families, working class this, working family that. Because that's how they look at society. Society has a pinnacle ruling class, an elite class, that can make millions of dollars over a weekend with insider trading, and it's perfectly fine. No middle class at all. The middle class is the enemy. The middle class is to be beaten down, whipped, and put into solitary confinement. Everyone else is working class. And that's what this critical race theory is founded on. Arkansas, Oklahoma, Iowa, Missouri, Texas, and West Virginia are among other states that are considering bans on this teaching, which regards America and Western civilization as inherently racist, because it's based on the idea that our society didn't start in 1776. It actually started in 1619, when the first slaves were brought over and put to work. Of course, they missed that little bitty detail. The little detail was the first slaves that were brought over in 1619, they were white. They were white. They weren't black. But that doesn't fit the narrative. As I said, theories, when you start out with theories and you avoid the data, you can come up with all kinds of strange results. So a couple days ago, the Idaho State Senate passed the bill. It wasn't even close, 28-7. After the House approved it, wasn't even close, 57-12. Both votes went along party lines, with the exception of Republican Senator Dan Johnson joining Democrats in opposition. It now goes to Republican Governor Brad Little. On Monday, a couple days ago, an estimated 100 students protested outside State House against the bill, which Republican lawmakers say is a safeguard against indoctrination of students. Critical race theory is a postmodern theoretical framework rooted in Marxist principles that views individuals through the lens of the oppressed or the oppressor, based largely on, of course, the color of people's skin, which is the stupidest thing I ever heard in my life. Who in the world judges people by the color of their skin? Wow. What do blind people do? I just don't get it. The legislation's sponsor is Republican Senator Carl Crabtree, said the bill does not intend to prohibit discussion in an open and free way. It is a preventative measure. It does not indicate that we have a rampant problem in Idaho, but we don't want to get a rampant problem in Idaho. Democrats contend the bill violates First Amendment rights. Oh, it's okay for us to speak, but nobody else can speak. You see, that's a violation of the First Amendment. The right to speak shall not be infringed. Senator Janie Ward Engelking, something about three names, something about three names. Is anybody else in the chat room like that? When somebody comes up and says, my name is, three names. I don't know. Something about not cleaving. I I just have a hard time with it. It's just me, old school. Anyway, said that the idea that schools are brainwashing children with a liberal leftist indoctrination is not true. But the legislation wouldn't have passed if it wasn't true. Our universities and school districts already have procedures in place that will deal with any problem we have in curriculum. Oh, really? Specially figured out by a team of experts, specially trained in your area. If the Russians were to invade by landing on the coast of Florida wearing rubber gum boots, not to worry. It's already been figured out by a team of experts specially trained in your area. Right. The bill bars teachers from forcing students into belief systems that claim a group of people are defined by sex, race, and ethnicity or religion are inferior or superior to others. That makes sense to me. Doesn't it make sense to you? Educators also cannot make students affirm or adopt or adhere to belief systems claiming that they're responsible for past actions done by people of their race or their origin. The teaching of critical race theory has gained momentum nationally in the wake of the death of George Floyd in police custody. However, the chief prosecutor in the trial of Minneapolis officer Derek Chauvin, Keith Ellison, said Sunday there was no evidence that race was a factor in the 46-year-old black man's death, except that you just said he was a 46-year-old black man. The Biden administration has proposed taxpayer money for critical race theory teaching in schools, and that's why they're fighting so hard for it. Because the teachers' unions are all about the money. In January, the president signed an executive order calling the Advancing Racial Equity and Support for Underserved Communities to address what he calls systemic racism. Actually, he didn't call it that. It was whispered in his little prompter, like I have this right here, but that's so I can hear my voice and I can hear the music coming in. He gets his words through his earpiece and then he puppets them into the microphone, and somebody said, systemic racism, and affirmatively promote equity and racial justice in the federal government. At last week, his administration proposed 2 new funding opportunities to incorporate racially, ethnically, culturally, and linguistically diverse perspectives in school curricula. I see. Last September, President Trump issued an executive order banning the teaching of the malign ideology to federal employees and federal contractors. The federal judge blocked Trump's ban in December, and Biden revoked it in January. So that's what we get once the courts get involved and they start undoing what the executive branch decrees. Among the students protesting the Idaho bill at the State House on Monday was an 8th grader. Her name was Yvonne Shen. She's a member of the Idaho Asian American Pacific Islander Youth Alliance, of course, which organized the protest. She told Idaho Press critical race theory is about self-awareness of the past. I see. Many people seem to think that teaching our students about the cruelty and suffering of our country's past is some form of self-hatred for our own country. But make no mistake, this is self-awareness, said Shen. Well, how is it somewhere in there that you left out Irish? You left out Scottish. You know, I'm 67% Irish, Scottish. I want to know where the hell my check is. Huh? We were the first slaves. Irish need not apply. A math teacher at a wealthy private school in Manhattan, Paul Rossi, drew national attention last week when he was fired for writing an essay accusing the $57,000 a year Grace Church School of indoctrinating students. $57,000 a year to go to that school. Wow. Rossi said he couldn't remain silent while witnessing the harmful impact of the anti-racism instruction, and he puts that in quotes. He released a recording of a phone conversation with the head of the school, George Davidson, who admitted, and I quote, "We're demonizing white people for being born." Close quote. It doesn't get any more racist than that, Earth Explorers. All right. Are you tired of the social justice? I'm all for social justice. Okay? I think that we should have justice. Justice, if we don't have it, it means we're going to go to war. And when I'm talking about justice, I'm talking about the rule of law. And I get pretty sick and tired that the rule of law is completely ignored for some people. Now, I realize you can't go out there and just arrest hundreds of thousands of people, but do me this favor. Just arrest the Dirty 30. Just arrest these 30 individuals. And I've told you their names before. Starts with John Brennan, Susan Rice, Samantha Power, James Clapper, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton. Just start with the top 30, okay? You just arrest them, try them for the crimes that they've committed, convict them, and sentence them. 30 people, 30 tribunals, if you will, down at Gitmo. You don't have to do any big publicity about it. Just remove them from our society. Yes, and Nancy Pelosi, too. Yeah, she's in the Dirty 30 as well. And not only will the faith of Americans be restored in their country, the rest of the world's faith in the United States will be restored as well. Why? Because of justice. Because the rule of law is being followed. That's what separates our country from all other countries. 2 professors at a university in Chicago who serve on a local school board were caught on an open Zoom call, and they were boasting on camera of their influence on social justice teaching in schools. West Cook News reported a couple days ago that Gina Harris and Ralph Martire, or Martire, maybe that's a better way of saying it, of Roosevelt University were engaged in the conversation before the February 26th meeting at the Oak Park and River Forest High School School Board. I quote, "I mean, it's all social justice, all day, every day. I get to talk about the things I love. I'm really living the life over here," Harris said. She noted she was teaching middle school theory and practice to future K-12 teachers at Roosevelt. Martire, a Roosevelt professor of public policy and public administration, said the way he views government budgets is through a lens of how to use them to organize society. Yeah, he says, "I always flip out the kids that take my master's class on fiscal policy and public budgets within the first 3 or 4 classes. They're devoted to philosophy of social justice and how you organize society. We don't talk about one, budgetary item. They're like, oh man, Professor Martire, this is really weird way to teach a budget. If you don't understand your values, you can't allocate resources among public priorities that are scarce, but all needed, right?" Martire added. Harris, in addition to teaching at local Maywood Elementary, is a liaison officer for the nation's largest teachers union, the NEA, which I believe should be disbanded as a national security threat. That's a good question. Halfbreed88 in the chat room on DLive says, "Why was Rudy raided today?" I'm going to cover that. I'll cover that as soon as I finish this story. Last week, the Biden administration proposed offering grants for K-12 history classes that are using curriculum claiming the United States is inherently racist. The funding will support the teaching of critical race theory and the 1619 Project, the New York Times series that contends the United States was founded on slavery, regarded it as the defining characteristic of the American experience. The grants, which distribute about $5 million a year, were listed in the Federal Register last week as proposed rules, open to comment until May 19th. Don't you know you can go there and make a public comment at the Federal Register? The Department of Education said that teaching is important because the U.S. is going through a national reckoning with systemic racism that highlighted the urgency of improving racial equity throughout our society, including in our education system. Yeah, so all you white teachers, watch out, because they're gunning for you. All right. I want to cover a little bit about what Abraham Lincoln said about this. Yes, I know. He has a pretty good Facebook account, actually. Last Tuesday, Powerline blogger John Hinderaker noted this. Virtual Joe and his criminal gang in Washington was pushing the idea that systemic racism permeates the nation and is woven into its founding documents. Earlier that week, St. Paul, Minnesota, Mayor Melvin Carter quoted from the Supreme Court's infamous Dred Scott case to make that point, accepting Chief Justice Roger B. Taney's dubious interpretation of the Declaration of the and the Constitution. Taney said the original Constitution regarded black people as so far inferior that they had no rights that white people were bound to respect. But good old Abraham Lincoln, Mr. Hinderaker pointed out, rebutted Taney's claim in a speech addressing that decision in 1857, before his presidency. Lincoln said that when the founders wrote that God had granted everyone certain inalienable rights, they did not mean to assert the obvious untruth that all were then actually enjoying that equality, nor yet that they were about to confer it immediately upon them. In fact, they had no power to confer such a boon. They meant simply to declare the right, so that the enforcement of it might follow as fast as circumstances should permit. That's what Lincoln said. And Hinderaker wrote, America fought a great civil war that derived from the debate over Taney's teachings. It resulted in the adoption of the Civil War amendments to the Constitution and other civil rights laws, yet ignorance rules the day. The United States is alone in the history of the world in its foundation on the principle of equal rights. We are proud of our founding documents and our history. We dispute the contentions of Taney et al. As self-evident lies. The original Constitution and hence original intent jurisprudence can only be defended if one distinguishes the principles of the Constitution from the compromises of the Constitution. The framers made concessions to slavery because they believed that the Constitution would not be ratified without them. Had the Constitution not been ratified in 1787, slavery would have been in a far stronger position. Instead, the new Constitution created a government strong enough to deal with slavery when the crisis finally came. Moreover, the future of the Union as a guardian of the cause of human freedom throughout the world depended upon this distinction between the Constitution's principles and its compromises. So, let me address this question about Rudy Giuliani's, I think it was his house that was raided, and I think it was raided by the FBI. And specifically, what I understand they were looking for was evidence that may support their assertion of a crime, and not the crime that you think. It's not the crime of Hunter Biden's laptop. It's not the crime of Joe Biden laundering $1 billion through criminal elements in Ukraine. No, not at all. The crime that they suspect that they're trying to gather evidence from by raiding Giuliani's office was whether or not Donald Trump violated Miss Yovanovitch's, that's the ambassador that hates Russians and loves Ukrainians, and was very close communication with Burisma, which was a criminal company that helped launder some of the money that Joe Biden had extorted from the U.S. federal government and given to Ukraine in exchange for dropping the investigation of his son for corruption and money laundering. She knew about it. She knew Burisma. She spoke to Burisma. She lied on the stand. She committed perjury. And so that's what they were looking for. They were still chasing the Ukrainian grounds for impeachment. That's what they're still doing. So make no mistake. I've said it before on this program. I write it in all my books. The FBI was formed in 1935 by Franklin Delano Roosevelt with the specific charter to protect the interests of the Democrat Party. And they have been doing that ever since. They have been doing that ever since, at all costs. Yes, that means assassinations. It means false arrests. It means witness tampering. It means creating false evidence. It means lying in court. It means blackmail, extortion. It means perjury traps. Everything they can use, including raiding Rudy Giuliani's private space to look for further evidence in that crime. So it's still going on. It still hasn't stopped. They're so afraid of President Trump. By the way, a couple days ago, Club 45 was founded, I believe it was founded in February of 2017. And it was designed to celebrate the president. It was down there in Central Florida. And it thrived. It did. But they expected it when President Trump left office. They expected Club 45 to close. But that's not what happened. 2 nights ago, Club 45 had an event with General Michael Flynn as the keynote speaker. There were 900 seats. They posted 900 tickets. 900 tickets took less than 10 minutes to sell out. They sold out so fast that people wrote them emails and said, hey, we've been trying to buy tickets and we've been unable to do so. I mean, the sale's only been on for like 11 minutes. And so they felt bad and they sold tickets to another 100. All that took an additional 13 minutes. So in 22 minutes or thereabouts, they oversold 1,000 seats, and Club 45 is doing better than it ever has. Donald Trump controls the Republican Party. That doesn't mean the Republican Party is doing everything that it should be do. In fact, I think the Republican Party is undergoing an internal revolt right now because you have the Cheneyites, the Liz Cheneyites, who want to take over the Republican Party from the establishment point of view. They want the old school oligarchs. They want the elites, the people that make $1 million a month, to take back over the Republican Party and make it just for the rich people. They don't want Donald Trump around because he's taking the Republican Party in a different direction. Donald Trump is taking the Republican Party in the direction of the people. The Republican Party is now the People's Party. And, even though he's not officially running for office, he is officially running the Republican Party in the sense that he's the guy raising all the money. He's the guy raising all the policies. He's the guy, not Liz Cheney, not Mitch McConnell, and certainly not McCarthy. The candidates that are running as newbies, they've never held office before, but they're running for mayor, or they're running for Secretary of State, or they're running for lieutenant governor or governor, they're running for congressman and maybe Senate. They're looking for Trump's endorsement, not Cheney's endorsement. And this is the grand schism that's occurring. Now, officially, Trump does not control the finances of the GOP. The GOP, if you've ever read the bylaws, you wonder how in the hell they ever got anything done. But part of their bylaws forbids them from giving any money to any candidate that would run against a Republican incumbent in that market. So in other words, they wouldn't, no matter how popular you are, would never give you a dime to run against, say, in Florida, if there's a Republican congressman, another Republican congressman against them. And so automatically, it puts the person running against the incumbent behind the financial eight ball. They got to raise a lot of money because the person that they're running against can draw on the purse strings of the GOP, especially if they've been faithful in raising money for the GOP. So if you'll recall a couple months back, what President Trump did is he sued the GOP and he told them, you stop using my likeness and you stop using my name because you cannot raise money using my likeness and my name anymore. I'm going to raise my own money. We're going to form our own political action committee. We're going to sponsor our own candidates. And that's why Liz Cheney is so afraid, because of the crimes that are going to be exposed to the American people. This is the real civil war that's going on. And yes, there is some violence. But it's isolated. Okay, one of the events that happened, probably the most violent that I could think of, was the cold-blooded assassination of Ashley Babbitt. As you know, the only death that occurred as a direct result of the confrontation between patriots and Capitol Police was Ashley Babbitt. She was murdered in cold blood at point blank. We exposed the officer's name and his Facebook page on this program. Although the corrupt judge decided that no criminal charges should be filed against the officer, he is not going to totally escape justice. The Capitol Police officer is probably going to be facing civil counts, which could cost him his career, his pension. Confirmation came from a lawyer for the family of Babbitt in an interview where he revealed the family will file civil charges over the violation of her constitutional rights. The lawyer, his name is Terry Roberts, was being interviewed about the decision by the Department of Justice to pursue no charges against the officer. The shooting death has raised a multitude of questions that have yet to be answered. We've asked them all here on this program. For example, Ashley apparently did not see the officer, and reportedly there was no verbal warning. The officer's lawyer has claimed several warnings were issued. That is not true. I saw the tape myself before you did. I saw the tape before the news saw it. But critics of the shooter pointed out that Babbitt was unarmed. She should have been arrested. At any point there, she could have been arrested. And the officer even fired the fatal shot into a crowd where other officers were standing right next to her, potentially endangering them. In fact, if you watch the film very closely, he lunges forward into the doorway to almost place the gun directly against her upper left chest, just above her heart, by the way, and pull the trigger. The gun was no further than that from her. While she was clearly trespassing and at the forefront of this trespassing crowd, there is zero claim that she was threatening the officer or possible person with serious bodily injury or death. Those are the criteria. Indeed, near her were other officers who were standing right next to her, armed. They had their weapons out. Babbitt was trying to climb through a broken door in the speaker's lobby as police fought back the mob, and the mob wasn't really pushing forward. The mob was yelling, but they weren't pushing forward. Completing, if the officer intended to shoot Babbitt, it would not likely meet the standard for a justified shooting under the governing cases like Tennessee versus Garner of 1985. If the officer fired blindly or wildly, it would include elements of negligence. Clearly, the officer had the required willfulness. He clearly could see that she was not armed. She did not present an immediate threat to him, and there was no legal justification for shooting her. Quick break. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Be evasive, but that doesn't mean that they're telling the truth as opposed to fiction.
And Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, and the word giants and also after that, when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, indicating that there were giants before the Nephilim.
And sons of God, plural. They weren't talking about Jesus coming down.
No, that's right. Yeah.
I'm Steve Crawford, host of Factor Theory Live. Join me every Sunday night from 10 p.m. till midnight Eastern Standard Time on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Check it out.
Transcending time and space, let us take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenton Perspective with our great host, Lorian Fenton. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenton Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
If you think for 1 second that the Capitol will ever treat us fairly, you are lying to yourselves. Because we know who they are and what they do. This is what they do, and we must fight back. You can torture us and bomb us. Fire is catching. And if we burn, you burn with us.
Good evening.
Are you awake yet? I hope. We've tried and we've tried for years and years to use passive resistance and loud voices to make a change. The time is over. Your governments around the world have no other goal than to decimate your entire existence at the hands of the bankers and the elites. The war is coming, and it's your choice to decide if you want to be a warrior or a victim. Denial is not a choice. anymore. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the number one listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio. All right. Thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
So good to have you all back. Thank you for that short break. Delina's out there making dinner, listening in the background. I can smell the lasagna right now. And, I kind of feel the same way as the studio that the war is coming. Whether or not it is a war of violence remains to be seen because we vastly outnumber them. Our frequency is much higher than theirs. We have a more noble goal, and that is peace, justice, and the American way. That is to say, all people have equal opportunity for success. And that is what it's all about. Nobody wants to be subservient. Nobody wants to be a slave. I think that we should be able to pursue happiness to its fullest extent as long as it doesn't take away from someone else's. I just want to finish off this possible justice for Ashley Babbitt by her family. The lawyer goes on to say, clearly the officer had the required willfulness. He clearly could see she was not armed. She did not present an immediate threat to him, and there was no legal justification for shooting her. Justice argues that the officer did not warn Babbitt. That is clearly seen on several recorded versions of the event. She was trying to enter the speaker's lobby just off the House floor, and he shot her dead. Further, he pointed out that the Department of Justice did not claim the shooting was clearly justified. Instead, it noted that prosecutors would have to prove not only that the officer used force that was constitutionally unreasonable, but that the officer did so willfully. I would argue that none of that would be required if Ashley Babbitt was black. And you know it. It's stressed that this element requires a showing of a, quote, bad purpose to disregard the law, and that evidence that an officer acted out of fear, mistake, panic, misperception, negligence, or even poor judgment cannot establish the high level of intent. I can tell you, that was not there. He was not afraid. He did not make a mistake. He did not make a misperception. He did not neglect. He did it as a willful act of malice. Violent riots are unfortunately common today in cities ranging from Minneapolis to Portland to Washington. The use of live rounds, however, has never been authorized absent a particularized showing of a significant threat to a officer or others. Nothing in the announcement in the Babbitt case answers how such a showing was made by the officer. Roberts, the lawyer, said the shooting was unnecessary and without legal justification. Specifically, the investigation revealed zero evidence to establish that. At the time, the officer fired a single shot at Miss Babbitt point blank, that the officer did not reasonably believe that it was necessary to do so in self-defense or in the defense of the members of Congress and others evacuating the House chamber. Roberts explained in a previous statement, however, the actual evidence is this: the officer shot an unarmed woman who was not an immediate threat to him or any member of Congress. That is inconsistent with any claim of self-defense or the defense of others, period. Roberts said the evidence is ample and supports criminal charges against the officer. And I couldn't agree more. I saw it before anybody else saw it, before it was edited. I saw it right off the guy's phone. I was standing right next to him on the sidewalk at the Renaissance Hotel in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. All right. Let's see here. I think what I'm going to do now, because I have so many listeners in D Live, we have about almost 30 people in D Live, 50 people in YouTube Live. I think I'm going to go ahead and give away some lemons. I just think it's a good idea. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute those now. We'll find out in 30 seconds which of the almost 30 people in D Live are going to get the lemons. But I do this twice a week. It feels good for me to do it. I like to reward the listeners who come and listen to America Free Radio. This is the voice of the revolution. As you can see, it's not a voice of anger. It's not a wide, bug-eyed, screaming voice that lacks reason. It's a scientific voice. It's a peaceful voice, but a revolution nonetheless. Okay, Mark Hovsepian, 33.2. Wow. Steve Y62, 19.5. Vonnie Kinsey, 14.3. Rudoso, I guess it is, 11.6. And Storms Up, 9.8. Congratulations. 5 lucky winners there on D Live. Appreciate you guys so much, so much. What is that? You said something about oxygen? Oh, yeah, you're talking about face masks. Don't get me started on that. You know, I work, right now I'm working with a company that makes safety equipment, and we're launching a new product, which is really high tech, really high tech. It allows firefighters to communicate in teams of 10. The difference between European firefighters and American firefighters is European firefighters will just let the building burn to the ground, and they just try to keep it from spreading. American firefighters will actually enter the building looking for victims, trying to put the fire out, trying to save as much property as they can. It's a totally different level of bravery, I think. But this company provides the technology that allows these firefighters to go in to smoke-filled rooms wearing an SCBA, that's a self-contained breathing apparatus, and to communicate with each other through a group as a team via high technology. And this technology is really, really something to see it. The prototypes are just phenomenal. And by the time this goes into production, there won't be a firefighter in the entire country that doesn't want to wear this stuff. It's like high tech and very safe. It saves lives, saves property. But it also means working a lot of hours, and I don't mind doing it. I enjoy doing it. I don't know what I would do if I didn't do it. Well, of course I do. I would. I'd be working on my prototype electric trucks, writing books, and talking to you probably a couple more days a week. But, you know, people need my skills, and so I deliver them where they're most needed, and they're most willing to pay for them. And you should too. Every single one of you are in business for yourselves, and you should never forget that. Some things are happening outside our control. Scarcity of silver and gold. I've been advising you for years to take 25% of your what I call residual cash or disposable cash that just sits in your bank account month after month and doesn't do anything. Or if you're like me, cash that sits in your safe month after month and doesn't do anything. Feels good to have it there, but it's just wasting away, you know. So take 25% of that and buy silver bars. But you can't do that now. I mean, you could buy it, but it will be months before you take delivery because there isn't any. If you buy a bar of silver now at today's spot price, you know that the seller is going to take your money and go speculate with it and try to get the silver and then ship it to you in order to keep the customer. And it's nutso. It's big companies like Silvertown and Scottsdale, and not what you would expect. Not what you'd expect. So what's going on out there? Why the big disparity? You know, a little over a year ago, we were all doing so well. In the beginning of 2019, it was like, gosh, we're getting ready to start the Roaring 20s. This is going to be great. It's going to be awesome. 2018 was a phenomenal year, and President Trump was doing such great things for everyone in entire spectrum. And we all had hope. So many new businesses started. So many people were making money. And then, of course, the made-for-TV virus came along. Somebody made a phone call, shut down 187 countries, and it all came to a screeching halt. Now, Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals has been in power for 100 days. He has the lowest presidential approval rating in history for the first 100 days. I mean, this is the honeymoon period, boys. This is where everybody feels good because you're giving away lots of money, right? No, Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals have the lowest approval rating of any administration in American history for the first 100 days. I got news for you, folks. It goes downhill from here. But what are the consequences? What are they designing to do? What's their philosophy? What are they trying to accomplish with all of this? I maintain that their goal is to destroy the American family. And I know this because I'm collecting the data, and I've made the hypothesis, and the data supports the hypothesis. With recent U.S. Census data, it's good data. I mean, I didn't collect it, but independent people did, and I analyzed it. The census data shows that the share of children living in single-parent households has more than doubled since 1968. Experts are once again sounding the alarm about the harm to both children and communities wrecked by this transformation in family structure norms. That data, announced by the Census Bureau earlier this month, shows that the number of children living with two parents has dropped steadily since 1968, while the percentage living with their mother only has doubled. Another piece of data, let me just slide this in here. Parents Magazine. It's plural, Parents Magazine. I went over the last 24 editions. It comes out monthly. 24 editions of Parents Magazine. Guess what's missing? Oh, no, kids are there. And moms are there. Zero dads. Parents Magazine has no dads on the cover. Not politically correct. Not the narrative that the Democrat Party is trying to put forward. In 1968, the census data showed just 15% of children not living with both parents. And by the way, that is black or white. Yeah, imagine that. Almost 85% of black children were living in two-parent homes. But all that changed when the Democrats stepped forward and started incentivizing women to kick the men out of their homes. Now, by last year, that share had jumped to 30%. Children living only with their mother is the second most common U.S. living arrangement. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And by the way, now it's 67% of black children are born to single parents. 67%. I would say the Democrats have accomplished their goal. Children under 18 are far more likely to live with their mother, only 21%, than with their father, 4.5%. The share living with neither parent is 4.1%. Those are foster kids. Sociologists have long noted that children from single-parent homes are far more likely to exhibit high-risk behaviors like drug addiction, criminal activity, violence, and experience negative outcomes relative to their peers in two-parent households. The Census Bureau itself noted that children's living arrangements can have implications for children's outcomes, such as academic achievements, when they come home from school to do homework, like all kids have to come home from school and do homework. If they don't have a home environment that's conducive to doing homework, guess what? The homework doesn't get done. If they come home to a house that has 4 kids in it and a mom, and the mom's away at work and doesn't get home till 8 o'clock at night, I guarantee you that homework's not getting done. Brad Wilcox, a professor of sociology at the University of Virginia and the director of that school's National Marriage Project, has echoed my assessment. He says this: the growth in single parenthood is bad news. It's bad news for our kids, it's bad news for our communities, and it is terrible news for our country. More single parenthood equals more child poverty, more school failure, more crime, more depression. Kids growing up in communities with more single-parent families are more likely to stay poor and end up in jail. And all of this takes a toll on our country, on your community, on your state, fueling social and economic inequality and making the American dream more unattainable for millions of kids across the nation. Wilcox pointed out that the U.S. has seen a small uptick in the share of kids living in 2-parent families in recent years during the Trump administration. The question is, will it continue? The answer is no. The trend has already reversed with the installation of Virtual Joe and his criminal gang. Robert Woodson, a longtime civil rights activist and founder and president of the Woodson Center, says much of the rise in single-parent households, in particular among Black Americans, only about a third of whom as children live with two married parents, can be blamed on policies adopted by the U.S. government from the 1960s onward. In an interview last week, Woodson cited in particular the works of husband and wife socialist activities and scholars Richard Cloward, you remember them, and Francis Fox Piven. It's called the Cloward-Piven effect, who lived in 1968, and they proposed a strategy. It was a targeted strategy. It was intelligent, it was well designed, and damn, it was well funded, that would eventually wipe out poverty by establishing a guaranteed annual income. Of course, we all know the outcome of the Cloward-Piven effect. The particular vision, of course, never happened. Poverty is now worse than it's ever been. It separated our work from our income on a mass scale. Along with the federal war on poverty, as well as widespread feminist denunciation of the nuclear family, it led to a disintegration of core family structures along with rising dropout and homicide rates. That's where these numbers come from. That's why we're benefiting from their well-funded, well-advertised, highly intelligent plan to destroy the American family. Woodson said that a broken family culture disorients young people and leaves them without proper role models. I come from a broken family. Almost everyone I know comes from broken families. Parents should stay together at least until the kids are out of school. This is what keeps the nation together. It's what keeps your family together, your church together, your community, your state, and your nation. And eventually it will keep the world together. When you don't have a sense of respect for life, when you're not given the proper guidance at home from both perspectives, male and female, something happens to you. There's a detachment from the meaning of life. Nothing is more lethal than someone walking around with a sense of content or purpose in their lives, which causes a degrading of life. It just breaks you down, and it turns you in on yourself where you think that nobody cares about you. And if you don't care about yourself, it's terrible. But if you do begin caring only about yourself, you can also develop a sense of narcissism. And that's why you see an increase in homicides and suicides and drug addictions and crime and homelessness. It all comes from this. Woodson said his center strives not merely to assist those in such dire circumstances, but to foster active, visible role models within those communities in order to break the cycle altogether. When I was a teenager, some of my friends utilized what was called the Big Brother organization. Big Brothers were 20 to 40-year-old men who had the time to mentor a kid that didn't have a big brother or a father or a mother to take care of him. One of my friends had a big brother. He was pretty cool, actually. He owned a Porsche, and he was kind of clumsy and geeky, but he tried hard. My brother didn't want the job. He was 9 years older than I am, and he reluctantly took me to classes and the university and the lab, and when he had to, just absolutely had to work, had to get stuff done, and he had to take his kid brother along. I was probably more of a pain in the butt than I remember it, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot, and it kept me focused on science. It kept my mind alive. Now, if you say that 70% of households raising children are dysfunctional, then that means 30% aren't dysfunctional. So we concentrate on going into the households of people in these communities that are in poverty, but not of poverty, and figuring out what enables them to achieve against the odds. And those are the seeds of renewal. Just because you're poor doesn't mean you have to be stupid. Poor parents, and I know lots of working poor parents, I was one of them for a long, long time. Stay together, teach your kids good values, and eventually your kids and you will eventually pull out. Yeah, there are a lot of forces against you. There's bad luck and there's bad society. And when you come from a broken home and you don't have the safety net, you don't have anybody to give you a downstroke on a house or bail you out if you go broke or anything like that, you got to catch yourself. When you fall and you hit the concrete, you got to pick yourself up, fix your own bones, and get yourself going again. Not many people do that. Not many people do that. The Census Bureau data shows a lopsided demographic distribution of single-parent homes. Yeah, I grew up in one. Half the people I know grew up in one. And they're white. You think they had privilege? They will punch you in the eye if you tell them that. They were raised poor. They wore hand-me-down clothes. They had 2 pairs of shoes for the entire school year. They did what they could do to get by. Yeah, they knew they didn't have. By the time you hit high school, you know you don't have. And it does affect you. But they were smart, and they pushed through it. One became a brilliant orthodontist. Another, a brilliant finance person. I mean, it's just, the success goes on and on and on. Black kids are the only measured racial or ethnic subpopulation, a majority of whom live outside of 2-parent arrangements. Now, honestly, nearly 9 out of 10 Asian children, 9 out of 10, 90% plus, they live in 2-parent households. So we shouldn't be talking about white privilege. We should be talking about Asian privilege when it comes to strong family units. 3/4 of white children and more than 6 out of every 10 Hispanic children have 2 parents at home. It's only the black family that has, I would say, a little less than 3 kids out of 10 live in 2-family or 2-parent homes. As Woodson noted, in the U.S., the seeds of endemic single parenthood, particularly single motherhood, were laid decades ago during the turbulent decades of the Mid-South, or mid-20th century. The writer and social critic Ray Heimowitz argued in a 2012 essay that the public embrace of single motherhood has been an American specialty, as distinct from other Western countries, one that has been an economic catastrophe for women. Those mothers are hurting not just themselves, but their offspring. In the present day, commentators and activists still regularly push to effectively normalize lone parenting, hence the last 24 issues of Parents magazine, demanding an end to the shaming and stigmatizing of solo moms and advocating kicking single mom guilt to the curb. Still, the link between one-parent households, poverty, and dysfunction persists, and changing that, Woodson argues, will ultimately have to come from within, not from without. The only thing I could think of that the federal government could do is get out of the way and stop subsidizing single moms. Only subsidize moms and dads together. Help them get on their feet. Help them get educated. Help them graduate. Help them get a job. And then you can back out of the picture. Yeah, I'm not ashamed to say I got food stamps when I was in college. I had 4 small kids at home and no income, going to school full time. To me, food stamps was just another student loan. And guess what? When I graduated, I paid those stamps back 1,000 times over. And happy to do it. Happy to do it. Wouldn't mind giving everybody food stamps that's in college if it meant that they could focus on their schoolwork instead of focus on partying. We have to find alternative ways to enable people, not support them to stay single, to stay in their groove, but to support them to improve themselves. There are people that are willing to help, but these solutions have to come from within the community, not from Washington. They have to come from within the community. All right. Let's move on to my next story. We've had another banker suicide. I know you're going, golly, not another one. This one's a Manhattan financier. He jumped to his death from a skyscraper yards from Trump Tower just weeks after his asset firm that was once worth $20 billion was liquidated. Wonder what happens. These hedge funds. Charles DeVolks, 59, was the chairman and chief investment officer of International Value Advisors when he allegedly took his own life on Monday at the company's offices at 717 Fifth Avenue in Midtown Manhattan. Yeah, that would be just a couple blocks away. The company confirmed the married father of two's death on his website, but the cause of his death was revealed by the research firm Morningstar. That publication reported the award-winning portfolio manager had apparently taken his own life. The NYPD had said that a man had died in an apparent suicide but declined to identify him. DeVolk's death came 7 weeks after the firm abruptly announced it would liquidate its funds and halt business. It said that it had completed the liquidation on April 19th. It is with heavy hearts that we announce the passing of our chairman and CIO, Charles DeVolks. The entire IVA community convey their deepest sympathy to his family at this difficult time. Now, here's the deal. DeVolks had founded the company 14 years ago, and he built it up. He built it up to be worth more than $20 billion in assets at its peak before it was ultimately liquidated. It took too much risk, too many bad bets, too many puts and calls that didn't turn out right, and they had to go and deliver the stock, which meant they had to buy it off the market. IVA had only $863 million in total net assets at the end of 2020. That's down from $20 billion. That's lunch money. I mean, you get down to that little, it's like, oh my gosh, what's the purpose of living? I only have $863 million. Wow. A source close to Volks told the New York Post that the tale of DeVolks is a Shakespearean tragedy. Ironically, many of the stocks he owned have appreciated significantly in the past few months. The source described the late financier as a complex man with a lot of hubris. Felt he failed in his mission of value investing and lost his mojo. The DeVolk's longtime business partner, Chuck DeLardemel, left the company abruptly in July, causing alarm for investors in the company, which had been hit hard by the coronavirus pandemic when investors withdrew their money. Now we see what happened. According to the New York Post, sources close to DeVolk's said he was hurt when some investors no longer trusted him with their money, despite being worth millions of dollars. Firm's assets had shrunk to $3 billion shortly before it was abruptly closed last month, but it was never about the money. One person close to the DeVolk's told the outlet, IVA was an embodiment of DeVolk's personality, and when it began to unwind, he took it personally. DeVolk's was a protege of legendary investor Jean-Marie Eveillard and had founded IVA after abruptly leaving the firm First Eagle, known as a value manager who favored undervalued and unloved stocks. DeVolk's was named Morningstar's International Stock Manager of the Year in 2001, along with Eveillard, his longtime mentor. He was a runner-up for the same prize in 2006. So he was successful. Couldn't handle the stress of being momentarily unsuccessful. We all hit bumps in the road, people. We all hit bumps in the road. And I got to tell you, when you've been to the bottom, know this. There's a bottom below. There is a bottom below. And then, a year later, everything can turn around. You just have to stick with it. And at 59 years old, with all that success, you have to wonder, what puts them on the windowsill? What puts them on the windowsill? So you have to forego somebody else shining your shoes for a while. You have to drive your own car. You might have to mow your own grass. How many people out there mow their own grass? I don't anymore. The neighborhood does it, but, I went through a lot of lawnmowers. I bought a lot of used lawnmowers, that's for sure. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Arizona. I'm really, really concerned about Arizona. Not exactly sure what's going on there. This is where the revolution really meets the road here. Just as the citizens of Arizona lobbied hard, sued, and finally got what they thought was justice in the 2020 election fraud, their hopes were evaporated today by the corruption of the syndicate. Cyber Ninja had the perfect plan, the perfect equipment, and the law on their side, or so they thought. Attorney and Professor David Clements shared in his presentation for Regent University that Judge Humatewa never provided Powell an opportunity to present her case and had her verdict completed a day after the attorneys were called in present to present their cases. This judge likely had her mind already made up before she ever saw the case. This is why Sidney Powell never got to present her case. In Pennsylvania, it was an Obama judge. In Michigan, it was another Obama judge. Now, we're not sure how these judges were selected for these cases, but we suspect that it wasn't random like it's supposed to be. It wasn't a drawing. They were assigned. And this leads us to Arizona today. We received information on how Judge Martin was picked for the election court cases in Arizona after Judge Curry recused himself 3 days ago. Judge Martin, you might recall, was appointed by former Governor Janet Napolitano. Now, also another Obama affiliate. The reporter made a couple of phone calls to determine who chose Napolitano-appointed Judge Martin to handle this election case in Arizona. The first call was made to the office of Judge Pamela Gates. It apparently is currently Ms. Gates' responsibility to appoint judges in civil cases in this state. And here is a portion of Judge Gates' bio from the state's website. We do a little bit of digging here to put this stuff together, so appreciate this. Judge Pamela Gates was appointed by Governor Jan Brewer in September of 2009, in the Obama administration, to serve on the Maricopa County Superior Court. Now, Judge Gates currently serves as the civil presiding judge. Prior to her rotation to the Civil Department in June of 2018, Judge Gates serves as the associate presiding judge of the Criminal Department. Now, a call was made to Judge Gates' office. The woman who answered the phone said it was Judge Gates' responsibility to appoint judges in civil cases in Arizona, except for election and related audit cases. This lady shared that for the current election audit case, it was Judge Thomason who selected Judge Martin for the case. So, a call was made to Judge Thomason's office. The lady who answered the phone there said that for the current case, Judge Thomason did not select the judge for the case. She said that the judge's name was provided to their office and Judge Thomason released the information on who the judge was. The woman that shared that for recusals, it's the presiding judge who appoints the judge. She then shared that it was, in fact, Judge Gates who provided Judge Martin's name. So even though it was Thomason that made the appointment, it was Gates that made the choice. You see how hair-splitting they can lie, okay? The American Bar Association has a code of conduct that all attorneys have to abide by. A judge must avoid any impropriety or appearance of impropriety, okay? Canon number 1. A judge shall, and whenever you hear legal language that says shall, by God, it shall. A judge shall uphold and promote the independence, integrity, and impartiality of the judiciary and shall avoid impropriety and the appearance of impropriety. Judge Gates has a clear conflict of interest, if not an obvious appearance of conflict, in any cases related to Maricopa County elections and audit. She never should have selected Judge Martin for the current case. She should be recused, and Judge Martin should be recused, and a new independent judge should pick an independent judge to oversee the case. So, Judge Pamela Gates, the wife of one of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, Bill Gates, not the Bill Gates, but just regular old Bill Gates, chose who was to provide over the election audit case. This same Bill Gates is part of the group that has done everything it could to prevent an audit of Maricopa County's 2020 election results. Oh, his wife just appointed a Janet Napolitano appointed judge to the Maricopa County election audit case. Now you see how I think we have just lost hope in the Arizona recount. I don't know if Cyber Ninja is going to be able to pull it out. I honestly don't. But we shall see. We're watching it very closely. I'll be talking again about it on Sunday night. All right, let's see. Chat room. Okay. By popular demand, everybody wanted me to read another chapter in the Birth Trilogy. So I'm going to read one of my favorite chapters. This is right at the beginning of the war, the final battle. I read part of it on Sunday night, but this is the chapter that really gets you. What is it? If you experience winds in excess of 120 miles an hour, you're at the wrong place at the wrong time. What? Oh, I see. You've never driven at 120 miles an hour with the window down. Yeah, okay. I was thinking something else totally. You mean like just standing around and the wind's going by you at 120? Because 120 on two wheels is awesome. It has a totally different sound. Yeah. Yeah. I have experienced winds in excess of 120, maybe 140, and they feel wonderful. Of course, the wind is still, and, I'm the one going. All right. Let's read chapter 37 of volume 3. Oh, by the way, just want to let you know, I apologize. This last weekend, we went to upgrade our servers, and it's been 10 years, and the servers were getting kind of old, and, so you make a backup file. You have the software at the server, crunch everything down into one giant zip file called a backup file. And then you download that backup file to your hard drive at your home computer. And then you wait for the server to be re-imaged to a new server. So it's all new equipment. It's all blazing fast. It's all new fast software and everything like that. And then you take that backup file and you restore it back to your server. Well, we've tried dozens of times to restore not one but two different domains, and neither one went. So one of those domains holds all the audio chapters for all my books. Now, I still have all the archives, not to worry. They're all still safe on my hard drive, but they're not on the server where you can access them with the links that you have purchased. So I ask you to have a little bit of patience. The server company is working on it right now. It turns out the backup restore process is probably not going to work. But not to worry, I've unzipped it all, gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes of it on my hard drive, and I will use my FTP, my file transfer protocol, and I will move the files folder by folder back to the servers, and it may take me the rest of the month to do. So have some patience. And here we go, chapter 37, volume 3, The Gathering. I don't know if I can do that. I mean, I've never done anything like that before. Abdullah usually gives me the subject material and I add my own style, said Shelley. This memo came from the president just now and he wants you to do it. You have to go live in 10 minutes, said the producer. I'm not saying I can't do it. I'm just saying I need some time to think about it. I need some time alone. Let me have 10 minutes by myself, okay? Said Shelley, shaking her hands in front of her face like she was trying to dry the moisture on her cheeks. Baby, I have to go live camera in 10 minutes. Don't go far, said the producer. You want me to have a heart attack on live radio? I really don't think anyone is catching the video signals out there anyway, said Shelley. You may be right, but I don't think that's what Riker is trying to get across. He wants your voice. People are comfortable with you, Shelley, said the producer. Okay, I'm going now. I just need a walk, said Shelley. Just don't come back with your makeup all running and shit, said the producer. Oh, nice. Hold my seat, will you? See you in 10, said Shelley, walking for the door of the makeshift studio. You only have 9, said the producer to Shelley's back. She responded by spreading her fingers and holding both hands up outside her shoulders, making sure they added up to 10. The hallway was busy, but her mind demanded that she be invisible right now. She was getting ready to speak to the world, but right now she didn't want to talk to even one person. She looked down at her feet, moving past the elevator and reaching the stairs. The door opened easily and she made her way to the ground floor and walked outside of Building 5. The orange light circles on the floor of the long tunnel looked like planets out there in the darkness. She walked toward it, and within less than a minute, she could hear the heels of her steps echoing off the walls. There were benches regularly spaced along the walls of both sides of the road, and she stopped at one of them a few hundred yards from the main entrance and sat on it. There was nothing moving out here. One thing about a cave city is that sound does not carry very far. She slipped her shoes off and felt the constant 55-degree rock on the bottoms of her stocking feet. They must vacuum this place, she thought, as she noticed the polished and clean appearance of the 60-year-old concrete. She lowered her head and for some reason folded her fingers together. Within a second she closed her eyes and let her mind go free. It was perhaps a trick in her own thoughts, as she did not let it open her eyes with the suddenness of it. But she picked up the scent of leather. She shivered a partial chuckle, realizing the instant image of Orphan's dark eyes looking at hers. His face was there, and his lips were smiling so slightly. He had a way of saying things with his face, like he would come close and almost touch her, and she knew he wanted to. She wanted him to. She had shown her hands more than once in her pockets, shoved her hands more than once in her pockets to prevent her from reaching for him instead. There was a denied aching between them. "I want to speak a word to you," his image said to her. She resisted opening her eyes. It was so tender, his words, like he was getting ready to tell her a great secret. She looked at him with wavy eyes, and he knew to keep speaking. "And then I want to kiss you. And with my lips just touching yours, I want to say another word, and on until I don't care what the sentence is," said the staring image to her. "That is the most amazing thing I've ever heard," she said in her mind. There was no breaking this bond. He told her. She listened. No other soul had touched her. No other man had ever looked at her. There was no other love than this man for her. "Tell them to get ready," said Orphan, with his breath warming her lips. But it wasn't his breath. He wasn't really there. No, wait. He was there. He was as real as she would let him be. And it was real enough. Although the image faded, she shivered again and inhaled deeply through her nose, reaching for every last echo of that leather. "Okay, I'm back," said Shelley. "And not a moment too late. Hey, check her makeup, will you? I think the gloss has gone off her lips." "Camera one, are you ready?" shouted the producer. "How long was I gone?" asked Shelley, puffing out her lips slightly for the makeup girl to roll on some more gloss. "Long enough for you to gather your thoughts, I hope. We're live in 1 minute, people," announced the producer. "Well, you can't say I wasted my time," said Shelley, rolling her lips together to spread the gloss out evenly. "Oh, come on," protested the makeup girl. Shelley waved the girl away with her hand and stepped up onto the raised platform that had the anchor desk in front of a road map of the world hanging from the wall. She fluffed up her hair, sat in the chair, and swiveled it to face the camera. There were no notes in front of her. For the first time in her life, she was facing the population of both planets live without a thing to say. Her mind felt like a bee trapped in a jar, but her heart was calm and full of the smell of leather. 4, 3, and the director put up 2 fingers, and then 1, and then the light went on. "This is Shelley LaSalle. We haven't spoken in a while. I'm going to play a little music in the background, so if you hear it, there's nothing wrong with your reception. I don't know how long this signal will last, so please pay close attention. If you look up into the night sky, you'll see another world, much like the one you're living on, getting smaller every day. Before we get too far apart, I want to reach out to you and let you know how much I love you. When I stopped to think about it, I I guess I've always loved you. You might think I don't know you, but I do. You might think I don't care, but I do. It's an amazing feeling that I only recently noticed, but now I can't imagine being without it. What you need to know right now is that you still have a choice. No matter what has happened, no matter how badly you think you have messed up your life, you still have a choice. Events may have happened that ripped the most precious things away from you, but you are in complete control of your life condition right now. All you have to do is choose. The events that have happened in the last few months are real, that's for sure. But that doesn't mean you have to accept the judgment you have placed on yourself. Yeah, you heard me right. You are judging you. No one else in the universe is judging you except you. Oh, you may have accusers. We all have those. But an accuser is not the judge. You may want someone to blame for your mess of a life. And if you have the capacity to love yourself, then you have the capacity to love someone else. And if you have those two qualities, you're ready to make this jump. All I can tell you is that there is a light in each of you, and you have the right to light up your world with it. Don't you think it's about time to let there be light? She asked. The camera was still red, and she could feel the heat of the lights on her cheeks. She kept her eyes straight into the lens, not wanting to flick her eyes over to the monitor to see her face. It used to make her so mad to see news actors look at themselves on the big screen monitor so they could tell if they were conveying their sex to the camera. The angle of the chin, or the tilt of the eyes, or the twist of the smile could grow the audience until someone caught you doing it too much. Shelley just looked at the lens. She imagined seeing the faces of each person out there looking back at her, waiting for her to say their name with her words or make them smile with her sincerity. The last thing you need is someone to preach to you. I am extending my hand to you. All you have to do is reach for it and feel the energy inside you. The love will do the rest. I look forward to seeing all of you when this war is over. Oh, and I have a good feeling about it being over very soon. Just remember who you are, and you'll be just fine, no matter what. This is Shelley LaSalle saying, "Peace, Earth Explorers." The red light flickered for a moment and went out. She exhaled, and the tears began to flow. It was like her whole life was pouring down her face. She could feel hundreds of millions of people staring at her, leaning into their radios to hear her words. The connection pulled everything out of her, but it also put even more back into her heart. She stood up from the chair and walked away from the stage. She looked up to see the producer with his face buried in his hands. The makeup girl was holding one of her oversized makeup wipes up to her nose. Studio was so quiet she heard the cooling fans on the video server. She extended her hand, and the makeup girl pulled another wipe from her box and handed it to her as she walked slowly for the exit. She wiped her cheeks and then realized where her feet were taking her. Oh, the rest of that chapter gets very good. You're really going to like these books, I have a feeling. So I need you to go out and look for the good in others and help it to grow a little bit every day, and before long, you'll save the planet. That's how it's done. One face, one hand, one heart at a time. You can't save the whole world, but you can save 2 or 3 people tomorrow, so let's get started. Not a harsh word. Soft answers to everyone. And this is how it's done. Thank you all for joining me on Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. We are in the top 10 radio networks on TalkStream Live, which is the big server out there, and that's who we reach every Wednesday and every Sunday night at 8 p.m. This is America Free Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, saying, peace, Earth Explorers. Now go and do. We'll see you Sunday night.